Welcome. You have arrived at a quiet place, not a place you had to reach by effort, but one that was already waiting for you. This moment does not ask anything from you. You do not need to carry the day any further. You do not need to hold the weight of thoughts, plans, or concerns. You are allowed to rest here. Tonight, you are invited to settle gently into the presence of God, not as something distant or demanding, but as something near, steady, and peaceful. A presence that does not rush you, a presence that does not test you, a presence that simply is. You can allow your body to become still in whatever way feels natural. There is no right position, no correct posture. The shepherd does not measure your rest. Offers Italiano. You are not here to perform. You are here to be held. The words you hear tonight are not meant to be followed closely. You do not need to remember them. You do not need to understand them fully. They are here only to create a gentle space where your mind can slow and your heart can settle. You are free to listen, or to let the sound drift quietly into the background. The scriptures remind us that God is present even in the quiet moments. Especially in the quiet moments. He is near when the day fades and the night unfolds. He is near when striving ends and stillness begins. He is near when the soul grows tired and finally releases its grip. This is not a time for teaching or instruction. It is a time for resting. Resting in the awareness that you are not alone. Resting in the knowledge that you are seen, known, and cared for, even now, even here. As the pace of the night slows, you may notice your breathing becoming easier, less forced, less noticeable. There is nothing you need to control. Your body already knows how to rest when it feels safe. And safety does not come from effort. It comes from presence. The presence of God does not shout. It does not demand attention. It does not interrupt. It surrounds gently, like quiet green pastures under an evening sky, like still waters that do not rush or pull. You do not need to move toward it. You are already within it. If your mind wanders, that is okay. Wandering does not separate you from God's care. If thoughts come and go, that is okay too. You do not need to push them away. You can let them pass, knowing there is nothing urgent waiting for you tonight. In T-space, you are allowed to let go of the day, allowed to release the effort of staying alert, allowed to rest without explanation. God does not require you to stay awake to remain under His watch. If these quiet moments help you find peace at the end of the day, you're welcome to like or subscribe to this channel, one calm night at a time. But for now, there is nothing else to do. Nothing else to attend to. You can simply remain here, breathing softly, resting gently, as we continue slowly into stillness, letting the night unfold under the care of the one who neither slumbers nor sleeps. As the night continues to settle around you, there is a gentle invitation to slow down, not by force, not by instruction, but by permission. The day has already done what it needed to do. The hours behind you no longer require attention. What remains now is this quiet space, where nothing needs to be proven and nothing needs to be resolved. There is a peace spoken of in Scripture that does not come from circumstances aligning perfectly, but from knowing where you are held. A peace that allows the heart to soften even when questions remain unanswered. A peace that makes room for rest without demanding explanation. In this quiet moment, that peace is allowed to draw nearer, not as an idea, but as a presence. The mind may still be adjusting, releasing the habits of the day. Thoughts may arrive out of order. Memories may surface briefly and then fade. This is natural. You do not need to correct anything. You do not need to guide your thoughts toward anything specific. The slowing happens gently on its own, like the evening light fading without announcement. Scripture speaks of lying down in peace and sleeping in safety, not because the world is silent, but because God remains present. Safety here does not mean the absence of all noise or uncertainty. It means that even within the noise, even within uncertainty, there is a deeper steadiness that does not move. As your body rests where it is, you may notice small places beginning to release. The muscles around the shoulders soften slightly. The face eases. The jaw loosens without effort. Breathing becomes quieter, not because it is controlled, but because there is no longer a reason to hold it tightly. Each breath comes and goes on its own, unobserved, unjudged. There is no need to prepare for sleep. Preparation implies effort. Sleep arrives when effort ends. In the presence of God, effort is no longer required. You are not being watched with expectation. You are being watched with care. If the mind tries to remain alert, gently holding on to awareness, that is okay. Alertness will fade naturally when it realizes there is nothing it needs to guard. The shepherd does not sleep, so you do not need to remain awake. The night was created for rest. Darkness is not a threat here. It is a covering, a quiet veil that allows the senses to soften and the inner world to grow calm. Under this covering, you are not alone. You are not unprotected. You are not forgotten. You may find it comforting to remember that God's presence does not depend on your focus. You do not lose connection when your thoughts wander. You do not drift away from His care when attention fades. Even now, even as awareness begins to soften, His presence remains unchanged. If these moments of calm help you find rest at the end of your day, you don't need to do anything else right now. You can simply let this continue. There is nothing more required of you tonight. From Iron, there will be no requests, no reminders, no need to stay engaged. The words will continue gently, but you are free to let them pass without following. You are free to drift, free to rest, free to sleep. As we move forward, the pace will continue to soften. Awareness can become lighter. Listening can become optional. You are safe to let go, resting quietly in the presence of the one who gives peace and watches over you through the night. There is a place where nothing is required of you, a place that does not measure effort or watch for performance. It does not ask you to arrive correctly or remain attentive. It simply exists, steady and calm, like still waters that do not move with urgency and do not change their nature when they are unseen. In this place, rest is not something you must create. It is something that already waits for you. The presence of God here is quiet, not distant, not hidden, not demanding. Quiet in the way a calm evening is quiet, not empty, but full without needing to announce itself. You do not need to search for this presence. You do not need to focus on it. Just as still waters remain still whether you look at them or not, His presence remains whether you are aware of it or not. Beside these waters, the soul begins to loosen its grip. There is no reason to remain alert, no reason to scan the distance, no reason to hold tension in the background. The shepherd has already led you here. You did not bring yourself. You were brought gently, without effort, without pressure, without explanation. Still waters do not rush the land beside them. They do not pull at the edges. They do not demand movement. They allow everything nearby to settle at its own pace. And as your awareness rests beside them, that same permission begins to echo inward. The mind does not need to finish thoughts. The heart does not need to resolve questions. Everything that feels unfinished is allowed to remain unfinished. The body recognizes this place instinctively. Breathing begins to soften, not because it is guided, but because there is no longer a reason to hold it tightly. Muscles that have remained subtly engaged throughout the day begin to release, not all at once, but gradually, one small place at a time. The shoulders settle. The jaw loosens. The space behind the eyes grows softer and less defined. God's care here does not depend on your faith being active. It does not depend on concentration or effort. You are not required to feel anything in particular. You are not required to think holy thoughts or maintain awareness. Still waters offer rest even to those who arrive tired, distracted, or unsure. The shepherd does not withdraw because attention fades. Beside still waters, nothing is counted. Not time, not progress, not depth. The soul is not measured here. You are not becoming better or worse. You are simply resting, and resting does not need justification. Thoughts may continue to drift through at first. They may arrive gently, out of habit, bring in pieces of the day or fragments of memory. You do not need to respond to them. You do not need to push them away. Like ripples that fade on calm water, they soften quickly when they are not followed. The waters remain still even when something passes across their surface. And in the same way, rest remains available even when the mind stirs briefly. Nothing has been disturbed. Nothing has gone wrong. The shepherd's presence does not shift with your state. It does not grow stronger when you are focused or weaker when you are tired. It remains constant, like the quiet shoreline that does not move when the water rests against it. You are not holding yourself here. You are being held. There is no direction to face beside still waters. No forward movement required. No sense of needing to go deeper or arrive somewhere else. Depth is not a destination. Depth is what happens naturally when effort stops. And so you can remain here without doing anything at all, allowing the calm to continue spreading slowly, gently, in its own time. Beside waters that do not hurry and do not ask you to hurry either. Beside these still waters, nothing competes for your attention. There is no sound that demands response. No signal that asks you to prepare. Everything here unfolds slowly enough that the soul does not feel pressed by it. The quiet is not empty. It is filled with steadiness, with a kind of calm that does not need to explain itself. The shepherd remains near, not as a presence that watches closely for mistakes, but as one who simply stays. His staying is not active in the way the mind expects activity. It is quiet, patient, and uninterrupted. Even now, even as awareness softens, nothing about his care changes. Still waters do not require vigilance. They do not hide sudden movement beneath their surface. They do not surprise the land beside them. And in this place, the heart learns that it does not need to remain alert. It does not need to listen closely for danger. It does not need to stay awake to remain safe. You may notice how this realization begins to settle deeper into the body. Breathing grows even quieter, less noticeable, as if the breath itself is learning that it no longer needs to announce its presence. The rhythm continues, steady and unforced, without being counted or guided. Each breath blends gently into the next. The mind, accustomed to tracking time, may still attempt to mark moments. But beside still waters, moments lose their edges. There is no clear beginning or end to this rest. It does not move forward. It simply remains. When the mind notices there is nothing it needs to keep up with, it begins to loosen its grip. The shepherd does not ask the sheep to remain aware of his guidance. They do not need to look back constantly to make sure he is still there. His presence is assumed, trusted. And in the same way, you do not need to check whether God is near. Nearness here is not conditional. It does not come and go. Still waters reflect what is above them without effort. They do not strain to mirror the sky. They do not adjust themselves to appear calm. They simply are calm. And as your awareness rests beside them, your inner world begins to reflect that same ease. If a thought arises, it does so gently, without urgency. It does not need to be completed. It does not need to lead anywhere. You can let it float briefly and then fade, trusting that nothing important depends on your engagement with it. The soul does not need to defend itself here. It does not need to explain itself. It does not need to carry the weight of understanding. God's care is not withheld until clarity appears. It remains, even when understanding slips away. There is something deeply comforting about being led to rest rather than instructed to rest. Instruction implies effort. Leading implies care. And beside still waters, care is what surrounds you now. Care that does not ask questions. Care that does not rush the process. The night continues quietly. Darkness does not threaten this place. It covers it gently, just as still waters look the same beneath moonlight as they do beneath the sun. God's presence does not change when the light fades. The same care that holds you during the day remains through the night. You may notice that the sense of self begins to soften slightly, not disappearing, but becoming less sharp, less central. This is natural. Identity often stays alert when it feels responsible for holding things together. But here, there is nothing you need to hold together. The shepherd carries that responsibility. Still waters offer rest without commentary. They do not explain why they are still. They do not justify their calm. They simply remain. And in their remaining, they invite everything nearby to slow down with them. You do not need to lean into this rest. You do not need to try to feel it more deeply. Effort only creates movement, and movement is not required here. You can allow the calm to settle around you at its own pace, trusting that nothing will be missed, even if awareness fades for a moment. Even if you drift briefly into silence, nothing changes. The waters remain still. The shepherd remains near. You are not left alone because attention softens. You are not less cared for because you rest. And so the quiet continues, unbroken, beside waters that do not rush and do not pull, allowing the soul to remain exactly where it is, resting gently, without effort, without expectation, without need. Beside these still waters, there is no sense of being watched with expectation. There is only the quiet assurance of being watched with care. The difference is subtle, but the body understands it immediately. Expectation creates tension, care releases it. And here, nothing is expected of you. Nothing is required. Nothing needs to be maintained. The shepherd's presence does not lean forward. It does not hover. It does not wait for a response. It remains steady, like the ground that does not shift beneath resting feet. Even now, as awareness grows softer, that steadiness does not change. It is not something you have to keep in mind. It is something that continues, whether you think about it or not. Still waters do not ask the land to remain awake. They do not ask the grass beside them to stay alert. Everything near them is allowed to rest, simply because rest is safe here. And as your soul remains beside these waters, it begins to trust that safety without needing to analyze it. The mind may notice that it no longer feels necessary to hold on to thoughts. Ideas may arise, but they do not insist on being finished. They appear briefly and then dissolve back into quiet, as if they were never meant to stay. There's no loss in letting them go. Nothing important is attached to them now. Breathing continues, gentle and unremarkable. It does not draw attention. It does not need guidance. Each breath comes and goes without asking to be noticed, just as still waters move without announcing themselves. The body follows this rhythm naturally, sinking further into ease. There is no reason to track how long you have been here. Time does not behave the same way beside still waters. It does not move forward in clear steps. It spreads out, becoming wide and soft, losing its urgency. Minutes and moments blur together, and that blurring is a sign of rest deepening, not something to correct. The shepherd does not count the moments you remain awake. He does not measure how quickly you fall asleep. His care is not based on outcomes. It is based on presence, and presence does not diminish when consciousness fades. Still waters do not respond to disturbance with resistance. If something touches their surface, they absorb it gently. The same is true here. If a thought or sensation briefly stirs awareness, it is absorbed without effort. Calm remains intact. Rest remains available. You may notice that the boundaries of attention begin to soften. It becomes harder to tell where listening ends and where quiet begins. This is not a loss of focus. It is a release of the need to focus. The soul does not need to remain sharply defined in order to be held. God's presence does not require clarity. It does not withdraw when understanding becomes vague. It remains when thoughts become incomplete. It remains when awareness drifts, just as still waters remain, even when the surface grows dim in the evening light. His care remains through every stage of rest. The body feels heavier now, not weighed down, but settled, supported. Muscles no longer hold themselves ready. The small, constant adjustments that usually keep you upright and alert are no longer necessary. Everything that can rest is resting. There is no destination beyond this place, no deeper level that must be reached. Besides still waters, depth is not achieved. It is hallowed, and allowance does not require effort. If attention slips away for a while, that is perfectly safe. You do not need to return quickly. You do not need to check whether you missed anything. Nothing important happens suddenly here. Nothing changes that requires your awareness. The quiet remains steady. The care remains constant. The shepherd remains near. And as this steadiness continues, the soul becomes calm enough to forget itself, resting without effort, without concern, without the need to remain awake. Beside waters that remain still whether they are seen or not. Beside these still waters, nothing announces itself as an ending. There is no signal that says something has been completed. Rest does not conclude. It continues quietly, without markers, without edges. This place does not move toward a conclusion because it was never meant to be passed through. It was meant to be remained in. The shepherd does not step away when rest deepens. He does not withdraw when awareness softens beyond clarity. His presence is not tied to your perception of it, just as still waters remain through the night whether anyone is watching them or not. His care remains steady through every stage of rest. There is no need to listen closely now. Listening itself can relax. The voice does not need to be followed. Words can pass by without being held. Meaning no longer needs to be gathered or understood. Everything essential is already here, and nothing more is required. The body rests more fully now, supported by something it does not need to name. Breathing continues on its own, unobserved, quiet, and regular. The space around the heart feels less guarded. The mind no longer checks itself for alertness. It no longer needs to confirm safety. Safety has already been established. Still waters do not change when night deepens. They do not become restless in the dark. They do not require light in order to remain calm. And in the same way, God's presence does not depend on awareness, wakefulness, or understanding. It remains even when consciousness begins to drift away. If sleep has already begun to arrive, nothing interrupts it here. There is no moment where rest must be earned. There is no threshold that must be crossed correctly. Falling asleep is not something you do. It is something that happens when nothing else needs to be done. Thoughts may now be faint or fragmented, appearing without form and dissolving before they are finished. This is not a loss. It is a release. The mind no longer carries responsibility. It no longer organizes or protects. It rests because it is allowed to rest. The shepherd remains watchful, but not alert in the way the mind understands alertness. His watching is effortless. unbroken, complete. You do not need to share that watchfulness. You are free to sleep deeply, knowing that nothing is left unattended. Still waters remain still, whether the night is long or short, whether you are awake or asleep, whether you remember this moment or not. And beside them, the soul remains at ease, held in a calm that does not need to be reinforced. There is nothing more to settle, nothing more to soften, nothing more to release. Everything that needed permission to rest has already received it. The night continues quietly. The presence of God remains constant, and you remain safely here, resting beside still waters, without effort, without awareness, without the need to remain awake. Held gently through the silence until rest becomes complete. There is a quiet assurance that settles when nothing needs to be guarded anymore. A knowing that safety does not come from staying alert, but from being held. Here, in this gentle stillness, the soul no longer stands watch at the edge of the night. It rests, trusting that the watching is already being done. God's care does not feel like vigilance. It feels like steadiness. It does not scan the darkness. It does not brace for what might come. It remains constant, unchanging, like a presence that has never known fear. And as you rest within that care, the need to remain aware begins to soften naturally. The body responds first. It recognizes when protection no longer depends on tension. The subtle readiness that often lingers in the muscles begins to dissolve. There is no reason to remain prepared, no reason to stay lightly awake. The night is not something to defend against here. It is something to rest within. Being held does not require awareness. You do not need to feel the arms that hold you in order for them to be there. You do not need to sense the ground beneath you in order for it to support you. In the same way, God's presence does not withdraw when sensation fades. It does not weaken when consciousness drifts. Safety here is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not reassure loudly. It simply remains, steady and unbroken. The heart begins to trust this not because it is explained, but because nothing challenges it. Thoughts may still appear gently, but they no longer carry urgency. They do not warn. They do not plan. They float briefly and then disappear, as if they were never meant to stay. The mind learns that it does not need to remain active to remain safe. The shepherd does not require the sheep to keep watch. He does not ask them to take turns, staying awake. His care does not depend on shared responsibility. It is complete on its own. And knowing this, even without thinking it clearly, allows rest to deepen further. Breathing continues quietly, steady and unremarkable. It does not need to be guided. The body knows what to do when it is no longer tense. Each breath blends into the next, without pause, without attention, without effort. There is no edge to this safety, no boundary where it suddenly ends. It does not recede as awareness softens. It does not pull back when sleep begins to arrive. It remains the same in wakefulness and in rest. The night grows quieter, not because sound disappears, but because nothing needs to be listened for. The senses soften. The mind no longer checks its surroundings. Everything that once felt like responsibility begins to fade into the background. You are not alone in the dark. You are not unprotected when you sleep. You are not vulnerable because awareness fades. You are held in a care that does not sleep. And because of that, you are free to do so. And so the soul rests more fully now, allowing itself to remain here, held in quiet safety, without effort, without vigilance, without the need to remain awake. Being held in safety does not feel like being enclosed. It feels like being allowed to loosen, like setting something down that you did not realize you were carrying. The soul recognizes this space, not with excitement, but with relief. A quiet release that spreads gently, without needing to be named. There is no posture required here. You do not need to position yourself correctly within this care. You are already within it. Just as a child does not need to understand protection in order to be protected, you do not need to understand this safety in order to rest inside it. God's care is not fragile. It does not require reinforcement. It does not depend on your attention staying sharp. It does not thin out when thoughts fade or when sleep begins to take hold. It remains the same, steady and complete, regardless of your state. The body begins to trust this fully. Muscles that remained subtly engaged began to soften further. The weight of the body feels more settled, more supported. There is no need to shift or adjust. Nothing needs to be corrected. Everything is already held exactly as it is. Safety here is not a reaction to danger. It is not something activated when something goes wrong. It is the constant state beneath everything else. The shepherd does not respond to threats. He remains present long before any threat could appear. Thoughts may still arise from habit, but they do not find anything to attach to. There is nothing to prepare for, nothing to solve, nothing to remember. Without a task, the mind grows quieter on its own. Breathing continues evenly, unobserved. Each breath confirms without words that the body knows it is safe. There is no urgency in the rhythm, no pause that needs attention. The breath flows as naturally as still water moving without disturbance. There is no need to check the edges of this moment, no need to see how far the safety extends. It does not have boundaries that need to be mapped. It does not weaken at the edges of awareness. It surrounds completely, without effort. The night itself feels less significant here. Darkness does not change the nature of this care. Just as safety does not increase in daylight, it does not decrease in the dark. God's presence is not affected by what you can or cannot see. If awareness drifts for a moment, nothing shifts. If listening softens until words blur together, nothing is lost. This care does not depend on comprehension. It does not require you to stay present in order to remain protected. The soul begins to rest without checking itself. It no longer asks whether it is doing this correctly. It no longer wonders how long this will last. Those questions fade naturally when there is nothing to monitor. You are not being tested here. There is no expectation that you remain awake. Falling asleep is not failure. It is trust expressed without words. And trust does not need to be conscious to be real. The shepherd remains awake through the night. His care does not shift or pause. You are not sharing the burden of watchfulness. You are released from it, and so the quiet continues, steady and uninterrupted, allowing rest to deepen further, allowing the soul to remain safely held, without effort, without awareness, without the need to stay awake. Held in safety, the soul no longer listens for what might disturb the night. There is no need to remain aware of the surroundings. No need to check whether everything is still in order. Order here is not maintained by attention. It is maintained by care that does not sleep. The shepherd's presence does not move closer or farther. It does not come and go with awareness. It remains steady, unbroken, like a quiet foundation beneath everything else. Even as the mind grows softer and less defined, that foundation does not shift. There is a deep comfort in knowing that protection does not require participation. You are not responsible for maintaining safety. You are not required to stay alert in order to be guarded. The responsibility has already been taken from you, gently and completely. The body continues to release small places of tension that it has carried for so long they no longer felt like effort. The muscles around the neck soften, the lower back settles. The legs grow heavier, not weighed down, but supported. Everything that can rest is resting now. Thoughts become slower and more distant, as if they are drifting farther away from the center of awareness. They no longer form complete sentences. They no longer point toward action. They arrive as fragments and fade before meaning fully forms. This is not confusion. It is rest deepening. Breathing remains calm and regular, moving quietly through the body without drawing attention. There is no need to follow it, no need to synchronize with it. It continues on its own, steady and reliable, like a quiet reminder that the body knows how to remain safe, held in God's care. The soul does not need to defend itself. It does not need to brace for change. It does not need to prepare for morning. Morning will come when it comes. For now, the night is enough. Safety here does not feel tight or restrictive. It feels spacious, open, allowing everything within it to soften without fear of losing support. The more awareness fades, the more clearly the safety remains, untouched by change. If sleep comes in waves, that is welcome. If awareness flickers briefly and then returns, that is welcome too. There is no correct way for rest to unfold. There is only the unfolding itself, gentle and unfolding. The shepherd does not count the hours of the night. He does not measure how deeply you sleep. His care is not conditional. It does not respond to your state. It simply remains. You are not alone in the quiet. You are not exposed in the dark. You are not vulnerable because consciousness softens. You are held fully and completely, whether you are aware of it or not. And as this knowing settles even deeper, without words, without clarity, without effort, the soul remains safely here, resting in a care that does not waver through the stillness of the night. Held in safety, there is no moment where rest needs to be confirmed. Nothing here requires reassurance. The quiet itself is enough. The soul no longer checks for signs that everything is okay. It simply rests within what already is. The shepherd does not step back when sleep deepens. His presence does not grow faint as awareness fades. Just as safety does not weaken when eyes close, his care does not lessen when consciousness softens beyond clarity. It remains complete, steady, unchanged. There is no reason to hold on to listening now. Words can drift past without being gathered. Meaning no longer needs to be formed. Understanding is not required. Everything that matters is already in place. The body rests fully now, no longer holding itself upright or prepared. Weight settles evenly. Breathing continues quietly, without interruption, without awareness. The subtle signals that once kept the mind lightly awake no longer carry importance. Held in God's care, there is no edge where safety ends. It does not recede with time. It does not thin as rest deepens. It does not depend on memory or awareness. It surrounds completely, without effort. If sleep has already arrived, nothing here disturbs it. If awareness lingers softly, nothing asks it to remain. There is no expectation, no outcome being measured. Rest unfolds naturally when nothing stands in its way. The night does not require vigilance. Darkness does not bring threat into this place. God's presence remains the same in the dark as it is in the light. The same care that watches through the day continues through the night, without pause. Thoughts now are distant or absent. The mind has released its need to remain active. It no longer guards the edges of awareness. It no longer checks the surroundings. Everything it once protected is already protected. There's nothing to prepare for, nothing to anticipate, nothing to remember. Morning will come in its own time. For now, this quiet is enough. The shepherd remains awake. His care does not sleep, and because of that, you are free to rest completely, held in safety, without effort, without awareness, without the need to remain awake. The soul rests gently through the silence, carried through the night, in a presence that does not waver, a search-for dwelling in peace. There's a peace that does not arrive suddenly. It It does not enter with force or announce itself with clarity. It simply remains already present, waiting for everything else to grow quiet enough to notice that it has always been here. This peace does not depend on resolution. It does not wait for circumstances to settle. It dwells quietly, steady and unchanged. To dwell in peace does not mean to feel calm at every moment. It means that calm exists beneath whatever comes and goes on the surface. Like the ground beneath still waters, peace remains firm, even when the surface shifts briefly. And here, in this quiet resting place, there is no need to reach for peace. You are already within it. God's presence does not bring peace by removing every thought. It brings peace by removing the need to react to them. Thoughts may still appear faintly, but they no longer disturb. They pass without weight, without urgency, without direction. Nothing follows them. Nothing is required of them. The body continues to rest naturally, not adjusting, not preparing. Muscles remain loose. The face remains soft. Breathing flows quietly, unnoticed, like a background rhythm that no longer asks for attention. The body knows how to dwell in peace when it no longer feels responsible for holding itself together. Peace here is not fragile. It does not need silence to survive. It does not break when awareness drifts. It does not fade when sleep begins to deepen. It remains constant, whether you are aware of it or not. The shepherd does not move you from one place to another now. There is no leading forward, no guiding toward something new. You are already where you need to be. Dwelling does not require emotion. It requires permission to remain. Time feels less structured here. There is no sense of before or after. No need to mark how long you've been resting. Peace does not belong to a moment. It stretches gently, without edges, without direction. If listening becomes faint, that is welcome. If words blur together, that is welcome too. Peace does not depend on understanding. It does not require engagement. It remains even when awareness softens beyond clarity. God's peace does not ask you to stay awake to receive it. It does not ask you to hold on to it. It does not disappear when you let go. It dwells, steady and quiet, holding you rather than being held. And so the soul rests here, not moving, not reaching, not anticipating, simply dwelling, safe, unrushed, at peace. Dwelling in peace does not feel like arriving somewhere new. It feels like realizing that there is nowhere else you need to be. The soul does not lean forward here. It does not look ahead. It rests in place, steady and unhurried, without the sense that something is waiting just beyond this moment. Peace does not press itself upon you. It does not try to convince you of anything. It simply remains, allowing everything within it to soften at its own pace. And as awareness settles into this quiet, the need to evaluate or respond begins to fade. The shepherd does not speak loudly in this place. His presence does not interrupt the stillness. It blends into it, like a gentle foundation beneath calm ground. His care supports without drawing attention to itself. You do not need to notice it for it to remain. The body continues to respond naturally. Breathing stays even and gentle. The small movements that once kept the body alert are no longer necessary. Nothing needs to be adjusted. Nothing needs to be held in place. Everything is already supported. Peace here does not come from understanding that everything is okay. It comes from no longer needing to check. The mind slowly releases its habit of scanning, of monitoring, of staying just slightly awake. There is nothing left to guard. Thoughts may drift through faintly, but they do not gather momentum. They arrive without urgency and leave without consequence. There is no need to follow them or finish them. They do not carry weight here. Time continues to lose its shape. Moments stretch gently without forming a sequence. There is no sense of how long this has lasted or how long it will continue. Peace does not belong to time. It remains whether time is noticed or not. The night itself feels less distinct. Darkness no longer signals anything that requires attention. It simply becomes part of the quiet covering that allows rest to deepen. Just as peace remains during the day, it remains now, unchanged by the dark. You do not need to stay present for this peace to hold you. Awareness can soften freely. Listening can fade. Rest does not require participation. It unfolds naturally when nothing interferes with it. The shepherd remains near, not moving, not guiding, not urging. Dwelling means staying, and staying does not require effort. And so the soul continues here, settled gently, resting without direction, without concern, without the need to remain awake, dwelling quietly in a peace that does not waver. Dwelling in peace means there is no longer a need to orient yourself. You do not have to know where you are within the night or how deeply rest has settled. Orientation belongs to effort, and effort has already been released. Here, peace does not require awareness of itself. It simply holds. The soul rests without posture, without direction, without readiness. It does not lean towards sleep, and it does not resist it. It allows whatever unfolds to unfold naturally, without interference. Peace is not something that happens next. It is what remains when nothing else is asked of you. God's presence does not shift with your state. It does not become quieter as thoughts fade. It does not step back as awareness softens. It remains the same, steady and complete, whether you are listening clearly or drifting gently beyond the edges of words. The body continues to settle in subtle ways. Weight distributes evenly. Small tensions that once felt invisible now dissolve quietly. There is no signal when this happens, no moment to notice. The body simply recognizes that it is safe to let go a little more. Breathing remains slow and easy, not guided, not observed. Each breath blends into the next without separation, like a continuous flow rather than a series of movements. The breath no longer marks time. It simply continues. Peace here is spacious. It does not press inward, it adopts room. Thoughts may still appear faintly, but they do not disturb the space. They float briefly and fade, leaving no trace behind. There is no need to follow them, no need to understand them. The mind no longer holds the shape it usually does. Its edges soften. Attention spreads thinly and then becomes diffuse. This is not loss. It is permission. The mind rests because it no longer feels responsible for anything. There's nothing to remember from this place, nothing to take with you later. Peace does not need to be stored or recalled. It is not a lesson. It is an atmosphere, one that surrounds and supports without needing to be understood. The shepherd remains present without movement. There is no leading now, no guiding, no next step. Dwelling means remaining exactly where you are, without expectation, without anticipation. The night holds steady around you. Darkness does not shift this peace. Silence does not deepen it. It remains the same whether sound exists or not, whether awareness is present or fading. And so the soul continues to rest here, gently and quietly, without effort, without attention. Dwelling in a peace that does not change, that does not move, that does not require you to remain awake. Dwelling in peace does not come to an end. It does not taper off or give a signal that something has been completed. Peace remains because it was never moving toward a destination. It simply stays, steady and quiet, holding everything within it without effort. There is no need to remain aware now. Awareness itself can soften completely. Listening does not need to continue. Words may fade into the background or dissolve entirely. Nothing essential depends on attention at this point. Everything that needs to be held is already held. The body rests fully, no longer adjusting, no longer responding to subtle cues. Breathing continues on its own, calm and unremarkable. The sense of weight is even and supported. There is no edge of tension left to release. Everything that could settle has already settled. Peace here does not ask to be noticed. It does not require acknowledgement. It does not change when awareness fades or when sleep deepens. Just as God's presence remains constant whether it is felt or not, this peace remains steady beneath every state. If sleep has already arrived, nothing here disturbs it. If awareness lingers faintly, nothing asks it to stay. There is no expectation, no outcome being measured. Rest unfolds naturally when nothing stands in its way. The shepherd remains present through the night. His care does not rest because you rest. His watchfulness does not depend on your wakefulness. You are free to let go completely, knowing that nothing is left unattended. Darkness does not alter this peace. Silence does not deepen it. Sound does not disturb it. It remains unchanged, holding everything gently, without movement, without effort. There is nothing more to wait for, nothing more to release, nothing more to understand. Peace does not increase or decrease. It simply remains, and so the soul rests here, quietly and fully, without awareness, without effort, dwelling in a peace that does not shift, that does not fade. It does not require you to remain awake. Carried gently through the stillness of the night, there is a moment when the soul no longer remains upright within itself, not falling, not giving way, but gently lying down. Trust does not arrive as a decision here. It arrives as a release, a quiet lowering of everything that has been holding itself just slightly lifted, just slightly ready. To lie down and trust does not mean believing that everything is understood. It means no longer needing understanding in order to rest. The soul does not ask what will happen next. It does not look ahead. It rests because resting is allowed. God's care does not require explanation in this place. It does not present reasons or assurances. It does not speak loudly. It simply remains steady and complete, making vigilance unnecessary. Trust grows not because something is promised, but because nothing threatens. The body responds instinctively to this permission. Weight settles more fully. The sense of being held by the surface beneath you becomes clearer, not through attention, but through ease. There is no need to hold posture, no need to adjust or correct. Everything is already supported. Breathing continues quietly, deeper now, slower, not guided or observed. Each breath flows naturally into the next, without pause, without effort. The breath no longer marks time. It simply continues, steady and reassuring. Lying down in trust means there is no longer a need to remain prepared. The subtle alertness that often lingers, even during rest, begins to fade completely. The mind does not remain on standby. It releases its watch. Thoughts may still appear faintly, but they no longer connect into patterns. They do not lead anywhere. They dissolve before meaning forms. Nothing depends on them. Nothing waits for them. Trust here is not something you hold. It is something that holds you, and because of that, you do not need to stay aware of it. It does not weaken when awareness fades. It does not disappear when sleep begins to deepen. The shepherd does not require you to stay awake to trust him. He does not ask you to remain aware through the night. His care is complete, whether you are conscious or not. There is no edge to this trust. It does not end when attention slips. It does not thin out when thoughts dissolve. It remains steady, carrying everything without strain. The night continues quietly. Darkness does not interrupt this trust. Silence does not change it. The soul rests without resistance, without anticipation, without the need to remain awake. And so you remain here, gently lying down in trust, supported fully, without effort, without awareness. Resting in a care that does not shift. Lying down in trust does not feel like surrendering control in a dramatic way. It feels like realizing that control is no longer necessary. The soul does not loosen its grip all at once. It softens gradually, releasing small points of effort that have been held so long they felt invisible. There is no urgency here. Trust does not rush the process. It allows rest to deepen at its own pace, without pressure, without direction. Nothing is being timed. Nothing is being evaluated. This moment does not move forward. It simply remains. God's care continues quietly, steady and complete. It does not check whether you are trusting enough. It does not respond to doubt or distraction. It remains unchanged, supporting everything without effort. The body settles more deeply into rest now. The sense of weight becomes more diffuse, more evenly distributed. There is no need to adjust position, no need to correct posture. Everything that touches the surface beneath you is already supported. Breathing remains slow and gentle, not guided, not noticed. Each breath arrives and leaves quietly, blending seamlessly into the next. The breath no longer signals alertness, it signals ease. Trust here is not an action. It is a condition, a state that exists when nothing else is required. The mind no longer scans the edges of awareness. It no longer prepares for interruption. It rests because there is nothing it needs to protect. Thoughts appear less frequently now, and when they do, they feel distant and unformed. They do not ask to be finished. They do not lead to action. They drift briefly and then dissolve, leaving no trace. The shepherd remains present through this deepening rest. His care does not depend on your wakefulness. It is not thin when consciousness softens. It does not withdraw when sleep begins to take hold. There is no threshold you must cross to rest fully. There is no correct depth you must reach. Trust does not measure itself. It simply allows everything to settle. The night remains quiet and unremarkable. Darkness does not alter this trust. Silence does not deepen it. It remains steady, whether anything is noticed or not, and so the soul continues to lie down in trust, resting without effort, without anticipation, without awareness, supported completely through the stillness of the night. Lying down in trust means there is no longer a need to hold the day behind you or the night ahead of you. Both can remain where they are, untouched. The soul does not gather memories. It does not prepare for what comes next. It rests in the quiet space where nothing is required. Trust here feels spacious. It does not tighten around certainty. It does not demand clarity. It allows the unknown to remain unknown without creating tension. The heart does not need answers in order to rest. It only needs to know that it is held. God's presence continues without interruption. It does not grow quieter as awareness fades. It does not become distant as sleep deepens. It remains steady, like a foundation that does not respond to movement above it, whether thoughts are present or absent. His care does not change. The body grows heavier now, not weighed down, but fully supported. There is a sense of sinking gently, as if the surface beneath you is carrying more of the weight than before. Muscles remain loose. Nothing is braced. Nothing is held in readiness. Breathing remains slow and even, flowing without attention. The breath no longer signals effort or awareness. It moves quietly, like a background rhythm that does not ask to be noticed. Each breath confirms, without words, that rest is safe. Thoughts now arrive rarely, and when they do, they feel incomplete. They do not connect to one another. They do not form stories. They dissolve before direction appears. The mind no longer gathers them. It lets them go without resistance. Trust does not require you to stay present. It does not weaken when listening softens. It does not disappear when awareness fades completely. You are not holding trust. Trust is holding you. The shepherd does not step away as sleep approaches. His care does not pause. His watching does not depend on your wakefulness. You are free to rest fully, knowing that nothing is left unattended. There is no need to check how deeply you are resting. No need to wonder whether sleep has begun. Those questions belong to effort, and effort has already been released. Rest unfolds on its own when nothing interferes. The night remains calm. Darkness does not alter this trust. Silence does not change it. It remains the same whether anything is noticed or not, and so the soul continues to lie down in trust, gently and quietly, without effort, without awareness, supported completely through the stillness of the night. Lying down in trust does not reach a conclusion. There is no moment when trust is completed or confirmed. It simply remains steady and quiet, holding everything without effort. The soul does not wait for something to happen next. It rests because resting is now its natural state. There is no need to remain aware of this trust. Awareness itself can soften completely. Listening can fade. Words can dissolve into the background or disappear altogether. Nothing essential depends on attention anymore. Everything that needs to be carried is already being carried. The body rests fully now, no longer adjusting, no longer responding to subtle signals. Breathing continues quietly on its own, slow and even without interruption. The sense of weight is evenly supported. There is no remaining tension waiting to be released. Everything that could settle has already settled. Trust here does not weaken when consciousness fades. It does not thin out when sleep deepens. It does not require memory or understanding. Just as God's presence remains constant, whether it is felt or not, this trust remains steady beneath every state. If sleep has already arrived, nothing here disturbs it. If awareness lingers faintly, nothing asks it to stay. There is no expectation, no outcome being measured. Rest unfolds naturally when nothing stands in its way. The shepherd remains present through the night. His care does not sleep because you sleep. His watchfulness does not pause. You are free to let go completely, knowing that nothing is left unattended. Darkness does not change this trust. Silence does not deepen it. Sound does not disturb it. It remains unchanged, holding everything gently, without movement, without effort. There is nothing more to release, nothing more to understand, nothing more to prepare for. Morning will come in its own time. For now, this quiet is enough, and so the soul rests here, gently and fully, without awareness, without effort, lying down in trust, carried through the stillness of the night by a care that does not waver. There is a rest that no longer feels like resting. It feels like absence of effort, absence of direction, absence of the need to remain present. This is where sleep settles most naturally, not because it is invited, but because nothing stands in its way anymore. Under God's watch, there is no requirement to remain aware. The soul does not keep one eye open. It does not hover near wakefulness. It releases itself completely, trusting that what remains awake does not need help. God's watching is not alert in the way the mind understands alertness. It does not scan or anticipate. It simply remains steady, unbroken. The one who watches does not grow tired, and because of that, you are free to sleep without holding anything back. The body rests, now without reference. It no longer checks its position. It no longer responds to subtle signals. Weight is fully supported. Breathing continues quietly, deep uneven, without awareness, without interruption. Sleep here is not something you enter. It is something that settles over you, gently and completely. Like a covering that does not press down, only quiets what was already still. Thoughts are now rare or absent. When they appear, they are faint and without structure, dissolving before they form meaning. The mind no longer gathers them. It no longer follows them. There is nothing for them to do. Under God's watch, nothing needs your attention. Nothing waits for your response. Nothing is at risk because you are asleep. The responsibility of awareness has been fully removed. The night feels wide and quiet here. Time no longer has shape. Minutes and hours lose distinction. There is no sense of passing, only continuation. Even if awareness flickers briefly, it does not pull you back. It fades again naturally, without effort, without resistance. Sleep remains uninterrupted. God's presence does not adjust as you sleep. It does not become distant. It does not grow faint. It remains the same, steady and complete, watching through the night without pause. And so the soul sleeps here, deeply and quietly, without awareness, without effort, under a watch that does not sleep, carried gently through the stillness. Sleeping under God's watch does not feel like being guarded closely. It feels like being forgotten in the safest way. Forgotten by worry, forgotten by responsibility, forgotten by the need to remain aware. The soul no longer checks itself for signs of wakefulness. It has already let go. God does not watch the night with strain or vigilance. His watching does not resemble effort. It is effortless presence, steady and complete, the kind that does not require reinforcement. Nothing changes because you sleep. Nothing weakens because awareness has faded. The body rests in its deepest state. There is no sense of position, no sense of orientation. Limbs feel distant or absent altogether. The boundary between the body and the surface beneath it becomes indistinct, as if everything is blended into a single, quiet stillness. Breathing continues without rhythm being noticed. Each breath flows naturally, uncounted, uninterrupted. There is no pause that calls attention, no movement that signals awareness. The body breathes because breathing is safe. The mind is no longer organizing anything. There are no thoughts to follow, no images to complete. What remains of awareness is diffuse, soft, and without center. Even this faint presence is allowed to fade further. Under God's watch, sleep does not need to be protected. It does not need to be maintained. It does not need to be deepened. It simply continues, uninterrupted, because nothing is pulling you back. The night holds steady without reference to time. Hours do not pass in sequence. There's no sense of earlier or later, only continuation, quiet and unbroken. If awareness stirs briefly, it does so without urgency. It does not form thought. It does not return fully. It fades again, almost immediately, like a ripple that dissolves before reaching the shore. God's presence remains unchanged. It does not lean closer. It does not step away. It does not react. It simply remains, watching without interruption. Through every stage of sleep, nothing waits for you to wake. Nothing requires attention. Nothing is left undone. The soul rests fully, released from every task. And so sleep continues here, deep and undisturbed, without awareness, without effort, under a watch that does not sleep, carried gently through the silence of the night. Sleeping under God's watch no longer feels like an experience. It feels like absence. Absence of effort, absence of awareness, absence of the need to know where you are or how deeply you are resting. The soul has released even the idea of resting and now simply remains still. There is no awareness of time here, no sense of duration. Sleep stretches without shape, without edges. It does not move forward. It does not pass. It simply continues, uninterrupted and calm. The body is completely at rest now. There is no signal coming from it that asks for attention. No tension, no adjustment. The nervous system has settled into quiet, trusting the safety that surrounds it without needing to register that trust consciously. Breathing continues softly, deep and steady, but even the breath feels distant now, as if it belongs to the background of the night rather than to awareness. Nothing rises or falls in a way that needs to be noticed. Everything moves quietly on its own. Under God's watch, the soul does not hover near waking. It does not prepare to return. It does not remain partly present. It rests fully, without holding any thread back. Sleep is complete because there is nothing left to manage. God's watching does not change through the stages of the night. It does not follow cycles. It does not adjust. It remains steady, effortless, and complete. Nothing about his care depends on whether you are aware or asleep. If the mind stirs faintly, it does so without forming thought, without forming images, without returning to itself. The stirring dissolves almost immediately, absorbed back into stillness. Without resistance, there is no difference here between silence and sound, between light and dark, between awareness and absence. Everything exists within the same quiet field, held without effort. The night continues without markers. Nothing signals progress. Nothing signals completion. Sleep does not move toward morning. It simply remains where it is. Under God's watch, nothing is lost when awareness disappears. Nothing is left unattended. Nothing drifts beyond care. The soul rests without edges, without center, without effort, and so sleep continues, deep and uninterrupted, without awareness, without direction, under a presence that does not waver, carried gently through the quiet, steady night. Sleeping under God's watch does not come to a conclusion. There is no moment when sleep is completed or confirmed. It remains steady and uninterrupted, because nothing is calling it back. Awareness does not need to return. Listening does not need to resume. Everything that could awaken has already been quieted. The body remains completely still, supported without reference, without sensation that asks to be noticed. Breathing continues quietly, deep and even, without rhythm being counted or followed. There is no signal within the body that calls attention back to the surface. Sleep here is not fragile. It does not require silence to survive. It does not thin when the night shifts. It does not weaken when the world continues beyond awareness. It remains intact, carried by a presence that does not sleep. God's watching does not pause. It does not lean closer or farther. It does not respond to stages of sleep. It remains exactly as it is, steady and complete, through every moment of the night. You are not sharing that watch. You are not assisting it. You are resting within it. There is no sense of direction now, no sense of forward or backward, no sense of time approaching or receding. Sleep exists without reference, without destination, without edge. If awareness has fully disappeared, nothing changes. If awareness flickers faintly, it dissolves again without effort. Nothing pulls you back. Nothing requires your attention. Under God's watch, nothing is left unprotected. Nothing is exposed. Nothing is at risk. because you are asleep. The responsibility of being awake has been fully removed. The night continues quietly. Darkness holds steady. Silence remains unbroken. Sleep rests within all of it, undisturbed, unmeasured, complete. And so the soul remains here, deeply asleep, without awareness, without effort, under a watch that does not sleep. Carried gently through the stillness of the night, there is a rest that no longer feels like sleeping and no longer feels like being awake. It exists somewhere beyond awareness, beyond thought, beyond the need to recognize anything at all. Here, nothing observes the rest. Nothing names it. It simply continues, quiet and complete. The soul is no longer present in the way presence is usually understood. There is no center of attention, no edge of awareness, no sense of self-holding shape. What remains is stillness, wide and unbroken, held gently without effort. God's presence does not appear or disappear here. It does not draw nearer or farther. It simply remains steady and complete, surrounding what no longer needs to be aware of being surrounded. His care does not depend on consciousness. It does not wait for response. It does not require recognition. The body rests beyond sensation. There is no signal rising from it that asks for attention. Breathing continues somewhere beneath awareness, steady and unremarkable, without rhythm being followed, without movement being noticed. Everything functions quietly, without reference. Time does not exist clearly. Here, it does not move forward. It does not pass. There is no earlier or later. No sense of how long rest has been present or how long it will remain. Duration has softened into continuity. Thought is absent or so faint that it does not form shape. No images gather. No ideas connect. The mind has released its role entirely. There is nothing left for it to organize or protect. In peace rest, there is no return being prepared, no waking being anticipated. The night does not point toward morning. It simply remains night, wide and quiet, holding sleep without interruption. God's watch does not feel like watching here. It feels like completeness, like nothing needing attention because everything is already held. There is no vigilance, no scanning, no response. Only presence, steady and unbroken. If anything stirs faintly, it dissolves immediately. Nothing gathers momentum. Nothing returns fully. The stillness absorbs all movement without effort. There is no awareness of rest happening, no sense of being asleep, no sense of being protected, and yet protection remains. Care remains. Nothing is missing, and so rest continues here. Beyond awareness, beyond effort, beyond the need to remain asleep or awake, held quietly in a presence that does not change. Resting beyond awareness does not feel like drifting. It feels like nothing moving at all. There is no sense of leaving one state to enter another. No transition that can be marked. Rest simply remains, steady and quiet, without reference to before or after. The soul no longer holds itself together. There is no outline to maintain, no boundary to defend. What once felt like a center has softened completely, spreading into stillness without direction. Nothing gathers, nothing separates. Everything remains gently as it is. God's presence does not need to surround anything here. It does not form a boundary or create a space. It simply remains as the ground of everything, steady and complete, without distinction. There is no inside or outside to this care, no edge where it ends. The body continues to function quietly, but sensation does not rise to awareness. Breathing moves somewhere beneath notice, steady and unremarkable. The rhythm exists without being counted. The body rests because rest is already complete. There is no sense of safety needing to be confirmed, no awareness of protection being present. And yet nothing is exposed. Nothing is left unattended. Care does not need to be felt in order to be real. Thought does not return here. There is no image forming, no memory gathering, no word finishing itself. The mind has no task and no location. It does not hover. It does not wait. It rests because nothing calls it back. Time has no direction in this place. It does not move forward. It does not pass slowly or quickly. It simply does not present itself. Rest exists without duration, without sequence, without change. If awareness flickers faintly, it dissolves immediately. There is nothing to attach to, no surface to hold it. The stillness absorbs everything without effort, without reaction. God's care does not feel active or passive here. It does not watch in the way watching is usually understood. It remains complete, unchanging, without motion. Nothing needs attention because nothing is missing. There is no anticipation of waking, no sense of morning approaching. The night does not point anywhere. It simply remains night, wide and quiet, holding rest without interruption. And so this rest continues, beyond awareness, beyond effort, beyond the need to remain asleep or awake, held gently in a presence that does not shift, without edges, without movement, without end. Resting beyond awareness no longer feels like rest happening to someone. There is no one left to notice it, no point from which it is observed. What remains is stillness without center, quiet without direction, presence without needing to be present. There is no sense of self-resting, no sense of body lying somewhere, no sense of mind drifting. All of those distinctions have softened into something wide and unbroken. Nothing separates. Nothing gathers. Nothing moves toward anything else. God's presence here does not feel near or far. It does not feel surrounding or watching. It simply remains as what is, steady and complete, without contrast. There is no need to be held, because nothing is falling. There is no need to be guarded, because nothing is exposed. The body continues somewhere beneath awareness, functioning quietly, without signal, without interruption. Breathing exists without being felt. Movement exists without being noticed. Everything that needs to continue does so effortlessly, without calling attention to itself. Thought has no entry point here. There is no surface for it to land on, no structure for it to form within. The mind does not attempt to return because there is nothing for it to return to. Rest has no doorway. Time does not appear as passing. It does not stretch or compress. It does not exist as a concept. There is no moment following another. There is only continuity, smooth and unbroken, without markers. If awareness stirs faintly, it has nowhere to stay. It dissolves immediately, not pushed away, simply absorbed. Stillness does not react. It remains unchanged. God's care does not feel like care in this place. It feels like completeness, like nothing needing attention, like nothing being absent. Nothing needs to be protected because nothing is vulnerable. There is no anticipation of waking, no sense of night moving toward morning, no sense of anything approaching. The state does not lean forward or backward. It remains exactly as it is. Rest here does not deepen or lighten. It does not increase or fade. It does not change. It simply continues, wide and quiet, without effort, without awareness, without boundary. And so this resting remains, beyond awareness, beyond form, beyond movement, held in a presence that does not shift, does not respond, does not require recognition, steady and complete. Resting beyond awareness does not arrive at an ending. There is no moment that marks completion. Nothing resolves, nothing concludes. This rest was never moving toward anything else. It simply remains, wide and quiet, without direction, without boundary. There is no awareness left to hold this state, no listener remaining to notice silence, no sense of presence that needs to be maintained. What remains is stillness without contrast, rest without reference, continuity without interruption. God's presence does not shift here. It does not become more distant or more near. It does not withdraw as awareness disappears. It does not advance as rest continues. It remains exactly as it is, complete and unchanged, without needing to be felt or recognized. The body continues somewhere beyond notice, fully supported, fully at rest. Breathing continues quietly without sensation. Movement, if any, happens without being registered. Everything that needs to function does so without effort, without signal. There is no time here, no sense of duration, no passage from one moment to the next. The night does not unfold, it simply remains. Morning is not anticipated. Waking is not prepared for. Nothing leans toward anything else. If awareness flickers at all, it dissolves immediately. There is no surface for it to hold, no structure to return to. Stillness absorbs everything without response. Nothing is guarded. Nothing is watched for. Nothing is vulnerable. Care does not appear as action here. It exists as completeness, as nothing missing, as nothing needing attention. There is no distinction between being asleep and being awake. No contrast between presence and absence. Everything has softened into the same quiet field, steady and unbroken. And so this rest continues, beyond awareness, beyond effort, beyond form, without change, without interruption, held gently in a presence that does not move, does not respond, the ways not fade. There is nothing more to arrive at now, nothing left to settle, nothing remaining that requires attention or effort. Stillness is already present, wide and unbroken, holding everything without direction and without change. Awareness does not need to remain, and it does not need to return. The night continues quietly, without shape, without movement that can be followed or measured. Breathing continues somewhere beneath notice, calm and steady, without rhythm being counted or felt. The body rests without reference to position or sensation, fully supported, fully released. There is no edge to this rest, no boundary where it thins or fades. It remains because nothing interrupts it. God's presence does not appear or withdraw here. It does not surround or watch in any way that can be noticed. It simply remains, unchanged and complete, without form, without distance, without needing recognition. Care exists as completeness, not as action. Time does not move forward. It does not pass. It does not gather toward morning or drift away from night. It softens until it no longer presents itself. What remains is continuity, quiet and unmeasured. Nothing listens now. Nothing responds. Nothing waits. There is no awareness left to hold this moment, and nothing is missing because of that. Stillness does not require witness. The night holds gently, without intention, without signal. Everything that could soften has already softened. Everything that could rest has already rested. There is nothing more to give and nothing more to receive. No conclusion approaches. No ending forms. Stillness remains, steady and unbroken, continuing quietly beyond words, beyond awareness, beyond the need to remain awake.